Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran. In today's video, we'll be taking a look at patch 9.1 and primarily the PvP changes and the honor talent changes that we have so far. They have announced that for patch 9.1, they want to do a pretty big refresher, not an overhaul, but a refresher for some of the honor talents that we use today in PvP. That means some honor talents that you don't run in PvP ever, be it battlegrounds or competitive arenas, those might get thrown out of the game and new ones might come in. But what will those new honor talents look like? We'll finally get a chance to take a look at it for ourselves. As with the last video, if you guys do enjoy the video and the regular content on this channel, give this video a like and let me know in the comments which of these honor talents are the most creative and which ones are not. YouTube really wants me to promote the viewer interaction and engagement, so if you guys could help me out with that, that'd be great. The likes don't really cost you anything, they're free, and if you enjoy the content on the regular, let me know in the comments. But anyway, let's get into the actual honor talents and some of the creative things that Blizzard is adding. In no particular order, let's start off with Rogues. Rogues has been my main so far, and most likely will be my main going into patch 9.1. Assassination Rogues, out of all the specs so far, have gotten one new honor talent called Hemotoxin. What Hemotoxin does is it allows Shiv to also reduce the target's healing received by 40% for 9 seconds. This effect is used off of your Shiv ability and is a pure physical debuff. So you cannot be dispelled or you cannot be decursed, you can't really do much to take it off besides immunities like Bubble and Ice Block. So it's basically a Mortal Strike effect, or rather a Warrior Sharpen Blades on a player. This also stacks with the Wound Poison, which at a 5 stack with Master Poisoner talent for Assass already reduces the amount of healing an enemy receives by 25%. So this together creates for some nice dampening for any incoming heals to the enemy. We all have seen Athaman in 5.511 duels. Hey, we've seen a lot of paladins in PvP in general just able to top themselves off using the Healing Hands talent and Word of Glory spam, especially those paladins that are running the Guardian of Ancient Kings legendary, which gives them a free Word of Glory. What I'm saying is just look at the amount of burst healing the Athaman is trying to do and just how many Word of Glories it takes him to get to topped off. Normally for a paladin it takes one full Word of Glory once he gets all the right procs with wings to go from, like, I don't know, 20% to 100, but here he had to go through 4 Word of Glories. So are healers still going to be able to top their allies off with the Shiv debuff on him? Yes, if they try really hard, but you will be able to heavily reduce the amount of healing they do with that Shiv, which could mean some significant gameplay changes for Assassination to be even deadlier inside of things like arenas. Definitely a good change for the spec in general. But with the good comes the bad, and we're going to be seeing a nerf to one of the Rogue's best PvP legendaries, Master Assassin. This legendary allows Rogues to have 100% crit openers for 4 seconds, but with the changes in 9.1, it looks like that has been reduced down to about 2 seconds. So you'll have about 2 globals whenever you open up on a target to gain 100% crit and do the most damage. This means this is going to heavily reduce the amount of burst potential that Rogues have. Of course, your abilities can still crit without this legendary, but most Rogues will stack versatility and mastery since they know their openers and therefore their vanishes will have 100% crit tied to them. This means that potentially Rogue supremacy in burst in the opener in PvP and the advantage of surprise could go away in this patch. Of course, Rogues have other legendaries they can use. Sub-Rogue can do the Rotten playstyle, you have Assassination with Doomblade, and for all of you Outlaw Rogues, all 5 of you watching this video, me included, you have the Deadshot Pistol Shot playstyle, which are all strong legendaries by themselves, but Master Assassin still, arguably, is the strongest overall Rogue legendary for PvP in general, and that seeing a shorter crit window means it's a pretty hefty nerf to Rogue's output. Next, we're going to move on to Warlocks, starting with their honor talents. All 3 specs of Warlocks gain a new ability called Shadow Rift. It's a 1-minute cooldown, and what it does is conjures a Shadow Rift at a target location, and after 2 seconds, any enemies caught within the rift will be teleported to the Warlock's demonic circle location. This means that Warlocks are able to kind of move enemies around as long as they're able to catch them inside of that rift. This rift has a pretty large area, so you can actually move a whole enemy team, and for now we don't know if there's any kind of target cap for this. World of Warcraft doesn't have too many abilities that cause displacement effects for other players. We have Grip for priests to save allies by gripping them to the priest, but also we have Death Knights with a Death Grip, gripping enemies towards them. But this is an interesting one that can actually move an enemy from point A to point B with a predetermined location. I can already imagine situations where Warlocks are able to move melee away from them or move healers on top of CC, and with some coordination this could have some very interesting uses. For Destruction Warlocks, we have a new honor talent called Bonds of Fel. What this ability does is it spawns a crystal with a dotted circle around the enemy. While inside of that circle near the crystal, the enemies are slowed, and if they ever leave the crystal, they'll do fire damage to all enemies attached to that crystal. So this is a very interesting ability that will do AoE damage, although split amongst nearby enemies, so you will essentially want to trap one person inside of this Bond of Fel, and maybe even either try to force him to stay in that one spot for CC, or you want to push him out of the Bonds of Fel to do damage to them. In fact, you can actually make an interesting combo with the previous honor talent. If you throw down Bonds of Fel, then Shadow Rift on the enemy, they'll usually be slow enough to not be able to escape the rift, and then you'll move the enemy, causing them to take damage outside of your rift. Potentially could be an interesting way for Warlocks to do damage to a singular enemy. Definitely an interesting idea of an honored talent that we have seen so far in 9.1. Next, we have Demonology Warlocks with the new honored talent of Fel Obelisk. You summon a Fel Obelisk on the ground with 5% of your maximum health, which empowers you and your minions within 40 yards, so this has a pretty big range, increasing attack speed by 20% and reducing the cast time of spells by 20%. That means your demons that are all about auto attacks will bite, slash, and punch faster. I tested this out together with some of the more powerful demons for Warlocks, for example the Tyrant as well as the Fel Lord, which took a little bit of a buff, where now this bad boy has a lot more health and also does a lot more damage. It's another one of those honor talents that got upgraded this patch, but every one of your pets will actually swing faster and cast faster, which makes them far deadlier. However, the Fel Obelisk just doesn't have a lot of health, and it doesn't take a lot of globals to destroy it. So as a Warlock, you will want to be careful when you place it, maybe even utilize CC so enemies are crowd controlled where they can't touch the obelisk, while you let your demons just rip them apart. Then we have mages, and for Frost mages, one of the coolest abilities ever is going to be Ice Wall. Frost mages have generally, from previous expansions of World of Warcraft, have been known for PvP prowess and mostly their ability to control the enemy. Slows, roots, polymorphs, maybe even stuns from expansion to expansion. Mages definitely have some of the most control in the game, and now they control you even more by putting a wall between the two of you. Ice Wall looks a little bit janky on 9.1, and I'm sure this thing is going to go through iterations of looks, but it's a wall. Just like a smoke bomb, it creates line of sight. It can be destroyed, but it's an actual impregnable wall that you have to destroy or go around. It creates actual line of sight so you can't target at the nearby enemies. And if, let's say, you're a healer with not a lot of damage behind you, you could actually be pushed into a corner, kind of stuck, helpless, until someone can DPS the wall down. You also saw a buff to Burst of Cold for Frost Mages, where Frost Nova empowers your next Cone of Cold to do far more damage. I tested this out, and on an undergeared mage it doesn't look impressive, but I could totally see for an interesting burst combo for a mage trying to just one-shot somebody with actual PvP gear, it could be significant. But the biggest buff to Frost mages has to be from the baseline damage increases of your Frostbolt. They did nerf the Deep Shatter talent so that your shatters with Frostbolts are not as massive, but with the baseline damage buff to your Frostbolt, it still ends up being quite a bit of burst. But the fact that you can now Frostbolt an enemy as a filler ability, and if no one interrupts it, it could be significant damage rather than you tickling the enemy, mostly trying to build up for icicles. More damage for Frost Mages is good. I don't really see a lot of Frost Mages in PvP right now on a regular, so potentially this could mean more Frost Mages in the future. Next, we have a couple changes to Arcane. Kleptomania is going to be an Arcane only honor talent, which is a pretty significant nerf for Fire as well as Frost, but it does give Arcane Mages a little bit more uniqueness over the other specs. And maybe this isn't a great way going forward, as players don't really like it when you just take ability away from the other specs and just make only one spec special for it. But with how many Fire Mages there are, maybe this could give arcane mages a lot more opportunity to shine, since they are supposed to be, you know, very mana intensive, very much spell steely, so this will give them a little bit of an edge over the other specs. Arcane mages also received a new honor talent called Arcanosphere, where you will build up a little bit of arcane energy in front of you over 4 seconds and then send it flying forward, doing arcane damage to any enemies it passes, but also knocking them back. This ability can also go through walls, so maybe you could have some potential for like a knockback, but also something that does damage through walls if you're trying to chase after an enemy, or maybe even interrupt a spellcast or when a healer sits down to drink for mana. Then for fire mages, we got a new talent called Ring of Fire. It summons a ring of fire for 8 seconds at the target location. Enemies entering the ring will burn for 24% of their total health over 6 seconds. This only works when enemies enter the ring, not exit, so when it comes to testing, it's kind of like a way to keep enemies out of an area, but if let's say you catch someone inside of the ring, it doesn't really hurt them. Also, testing the ring, it only hurts them once, so once you enter the ring, if you exit and enter again, it won't trigger the effect again. I was really hoping for a more interesting playstyle where, like a Death Knight, let's say a Blood Deacon or an RBG, can death group everybody into the ring, and as they're running out of it, they take damage. So then you could drop a bunch of AoEs into the ring, so enemies have a option: either run out of the ring and take the damage from the ring, or stay inside and get pelted by blizzards and meteors. But it doesn't seem to work like that. I don't know, this makes it maybe a little bit less good. Hopefully they'll change it so that you take damage when you run in and out, and maybe even make it more punishing that every time you charge the ring, whether coming out or coming in, if you're just kind of messing and dancing in the ring, you just take loads of damage, but still a really cool talent regardless. They also changed how honor talent controlled burn works. Ignite will now do 100% more damage instead of 100% faster dot ticks. That means your ignite damage in PvP can actually be significant. This damage is only enhanced this way when your combustion isn't used. So during combustion, you have big bursts. Outside of combustion, you could actually have some really decent sustained damage on an enemy. Testing this out, I think this could definitely give some dot potential in a sense to fire mages, especially as they're able to stack up ignites, and especially if they play more aggressively rather than pop their cooldowns and then AFK until combustion is up. Also, they buffed World in Flames, but also changed it slightly. Flame Strike now reduces the cast time of your next Flame Strike and enhances its damage. So if you're a fire mage in BGs or RBGs and you just want to make Flame Strikes happen inside of, I don't know, enemies fighting around the flag and really deny them that zone, maybe together with Flame Patch, then this could be a really cool combo. Although I don't really see a lot of fire mages playing this playstyle that much when it comes to RBGs. Most mages in general for PvP love pyroblasting enemies instead of Flame Striking them, but this could become maybe good at some point. For Death Knights, they replaced one of their honor talents called Heartstop Aura, and now it's replaced with Shroud of Winter. Heartstop Aura reduces the enemy's cooldown recovery by, I believe it's 30% when they are near the Death Knight. So as long as the Death Knight is snuggling next to you, your defenses are coming back slower, your offensives come back slower, your mobility and CC, if those have a cooldown, also come back slower. With this change, Shroud of Winter changes it so that your enemies that are near you, their range of abilities becomes shorter by 30%. So it's not as good as Heartstop Aura with cooldown reduction aspects, or cooldown, I guess, increase aspect, but it can be somewhat useful. That means mages that usually can snipe a polymorph from a while away, while the Death Knight is on them, do have a shorter range for polymorphs. It's not that much shorter in my opinion, but it is technically shorter. So warriors will have a harder time leaping on top of the healer, hitting them with a fear. They might have to leap, waddle over, and then fear them. So technically it does have some uses, but testing this out in PTR, it doesn't seem nearly as strong as the talent it's replacing. So overall seems like a bit of a nerf for Frost Death Knights. Then all the specs of Priest got an improved Dispel, which reduces the cooldown of Dispel down to 15 seconds and reduces its mana quite heavily. This means that a priest can now dispel enemies more often, whether it's offensive buffs or maybe a defensive buff, or maybe just dispelling their allies and all the different dots and effects on them. I think this actually is a really interesting talent together with a conduit of mass dispel to reduce the mana further. A priest like a Shadow Priest could be a little bit more aggressive with mass dispels. Same thing goes for Holy Priest as well as Disc Priest, and this could be useful maybe with Hunters. If they have, let's say, a 30-second CD on their traps, you should be able to dispel that trap every single time. The question, however, is though, you only get 3 honor talents, so is this one as good as the other options? And from a few priests that play it regularly, I've heard that it doesn't seem that good in terms of replacement. Maybe there'll be some usage for it, but not nearly as much off the top of their heads. Finally, best for last, we got Mistweaver monks. First one is going to be called Peace Weaver. Revitalize cooldown is reduced by 50%, which at the time of testing did not work in PTR, but it does also provide you immunity from frost abilities, or really harmful magic effects, for 2 seconds. This part actually works, the immunity actually exists, so you kind of get an immunity for your whole party. So if a mage is casting a chaos bolt at you, or keeps pelting you with frost bolts, and you want to immune that cast for a quick second, you could. Now, it does mean the Peace Weaver will be used more aggressively this way, as soon as the cooldown reduction aspect works, but that one seems like a really strong one for Mistweavers. Then we have Thunder Focus T, an honor talent that enhances more abilities for monks when it comes to PvP. Like Crackling Jade Lightning will now have a more immediate knockback effect, which allows monks to dominate now all of a sudden, particularly the Mistweaver monks, inside of maps like Arathi Basin, especially when you're trying to defend the Lumber Mill, or if you are trying to play out Eye of the Storm and down the center, you don't see any shamans, you don't see any druids, you think you're all good, and then all of a sudden a Mistweaver monk comes out and knocks you back. Another effect it also buffs is Essence Font to increase your movement speed by 70% and provide immunity to movement impairing effects. It doesn't clear already present movement impairing effects, but it can prevent movement impairing effects from, let's say, an incoming frostbolt. So if you're about to get hit with a slow, you can use this ability to immune that slow, but if you're already slowed, it doesn't clear those effects. Then there was also a change to counteract magic. Removing a hostile magic effect from you or an ally grants them a buff where they actually take more healing from you. So this one got changed, and I'm not really sure if this is better or worse than the original version, but with this one it enforces a little bit of a positive side from monks constantly having to dispel their allies. So instead of having your heal over time effect get enhanced when the enemy has a magic debuff, now you actually have to spend the mana to dispel them. But when you do 10% more healing to them, stacking. So that goes from 10%, 20%, 30%. So you could actually have quite a hefty amount of healing to them, especially when it comes to burst. So dealing with dots, being a little bit more aggressive at cleansing those dots as a monk might be a bit more beneficial depending on how you play this talent. I'm sure this is going to be very mana intensive, always having to dispel your allies or yourself from all those dots, but it might just be better than healing those dots, and now it gives you a little bit of a benefit. Now this buff does get applied to the person you're dispelling, not to the monk, so you're not increasing the amount of healing you do overall, but you're increasing the amount of healing you do to the target that you've been dispelling for the last however many dispels. Then the honor talent of Refreshing Breeze got changed up. During Soothing Mist channel, Expel Harm healing is increased by 15% and dispels one magic, disease, or poison effect from the target. The healing component also stacks the longer Soothing Mist is channeled on the target. So when I start channeling Soothing Mist on myself, you can see Refreshing Breeze stacking up bit by bit. And you can see it stacks all the way to 10, where at 10 stacks, my own heal from the Expel Harm will have the most impact. This also does offer a dispel, so I'm able to constantly dispel the Frostbolt slow from a mage, blast me with Frostbolts over and over, but this will also allow you to dispel yourself as well as an ally, as the way it works for monks, when you're channeling Soothing Mist on an ally and you use Expel Harm will hit the person you're channeling and also yourself. This is a very interesting honor talent. The ramping stacks could technically be used in order to, I guess, line up a pretty big heal, but I think where this mostly will be used is to constantly dispel yourself and whoever you have as your target for Soothing Mist that you're channeling. So definitely a ton of dispels for monks with dispel benefits, it looks like. The next honor talent is going to be Dematerialize, but this one doesn't seem to work currently. But what it's supposed to do is give you a pretty hefty damage reduction once you get stunned. However, on PTR, it doesn't seem to work properly. You don't get any kind of indicators, any buffs or debuffs, whether you're taking more damage or less damage with this talent. So my guess is it doesn't work right now, but probably will in the future. The idea behind Dematerialize is actually quite good, as monks generally are pretty squishy, so being able to have a DR when you get stunned by a rogue or a warrior and have the damage reduction applied to you could save you quite often. Finally, the honor talent Eminence for Mystery Monks got a bit of a change. You now can use the monk teleport ability while stunned. So this gives monks a bit more escapes from stuns. Again, monks are pretty squishy and they generally tend to die in stuns quite often. So together with Dematerialize, Eminence could be quite good. There's actually an extra benefit to Eminence if you use the teleport called Transcendence while you are not stunned, and this part doesn't seem to work currently on PTR, but what's supposed to happen is if you teleport while you do not have a stun, it is actually supposed to reduce the cooldown of Transcendence by a few seconds, which means more mobility, so you can use it to escape enemies whether you're stunned, whether you're not. Overall, this together combines for quite a hefty amount of buffs for Mystery Monks in PvP. Still, maybe a little too early to tell just how amazing they're going to be, but this is definitely a lot of work that Blizzard put in. For monks in particular, lots of new honor talents to deal with a variety of different situations, and hopefully to deal with some of the encounters that they might have a hard time with. This overall looks really good for monks, and if you haven't played your monk in PvP for a while, I feel like patch 9.1 might be the time to resurrect them and try out healing again. I'm sure this isn't the final list of all the changes for patch 9.1, as in the next few weeks we'll most likely see even more updates for classes and specs. I don't think Blizzard has made all the changes they want, and next week or the week after we might see more. And I'll definitely make updated videos on this channel for you guys if you want me to do so. But thank you guys so much for checking out this video. I really do hope you guys enjoy it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And as always, I'll see all of you guys in another video.